Picture this. It is a Friday afternoon. You open up a shared design file, right?
I already know where this is going.
Yeah, you probably do. So you just need to make one simple update to a primary call to action before this massive critical client presentation.
Just one simple button.
Exactly. So you click on the button and the layer panel, it auto scrolls to highlight your selection and it reads, I kid you not, rectangle 1 copy 42.
Classic. Absolutely classic.
Right. Your blood pressure instantly spikes. You look at the layers above it and it's just this wall of chaos, like vector 7, group 114, frame 2 copy.
It's terrifying.
It really is. The file isn't just messy, it is an active landmine of technical debt. And you realize, oh great, I am going to spend the next hour simply trying to decipher the archaeology of another designer's completely chaotic workflow.
The digital archaeology, yeah, that cognitive friction in that specific Friday afternoon scenario, it is entirely preventable.
Completely preventable.
Yet it remains probably one of the most common bottlenecks in digital product development today.
Welcome to the deep dive. Because today, we are stepping away from the penthouse view of UI design. The gorgeous typography and the smooth animations.
The fun stuff.
Right, the fun stuff. Instead, we are heading straight down into the basement. We are looking at the foundational blueprints, the invisible infrastructure.
And this is so necessary, because when you step into a complex design environment, the diagnostic landscape of what makes a file structurally sound is, well, it's often ignored until it becomes a catastrophic time sink.
Oh, 100%.
We tend to evaluate UI based on its final render in the browser, right?
Yeah.
And we completely neglect the actual health of the source file.
Which is exactly why today's mission is so crucial. We are digging into chapter 25, which is called Design Process, from a really brilliant book called Design User Interface.
That's a fantastic chapter.
It really is. And the mission here is to break down the core, non-negotiable design concepts for someone just starting their career, or, honestly, even a veteran who desperately needs to audit their own workflow.
Because a lot of veterans have terrible habits.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Tons of it. We are moving entirely past the aesthetic theory of, how to draw pretty shapes. Today is about engineering a scalable design file that won't make your development team literally want to pull their hair out.
A noble goal.
Very noble. And since we are getting so deep into the actual systems architecture of digital design today, please explicitly make sure to follow for more technical design breakdowns and career-building content.
Highly recommend that.
Yeah, because we are constantly deconstructing resources exactly like this to help you level up your process.
And I have to say, this text we're looking at today, it is highly pragmatic.
Oh, very much so.
The author completely bypasses the whole philosophy of visual appeal. They just drive straight into the trenches of component management, naming conventions, cross-disciplinary handoffs.
The real dirty work.
Exactly. And honestly, if you want to actually see the visual examples we are analyzing today, because the specific folder structures and the syntax visualizers in this text are incredibly detailed, you really need this source material in front of you.
Absolutely. So you can grab your own copy of Design User Interface by going to the link https://hyperfouracademy.gumroad.com/luabook.
It's worth it just for the visual reference.
Totally. Or, you can simply buy the book by scanning the QR code of the book link provided in the description below. Trust me, having that visual reference is going to fundamentally change how you approach your workspace.
It really will.
Okay, let's unpack this. I want to start at the absolute granular level, because before we can build a complex design system, we have to talk about the single individual vector.
The atomic level.
Right. And the text brings up that dreaded default naming cascade that I mentioned earlier. You draw a shape, and the default trap just snaps shut. Boom, rectangle 1.
And then you duplicate it.
Yep. You duplicate it, and the software aggressively compiles a history of your actions, right? Rectangle 1 copy, rectangle 1 copy 1, rectangle 1 copy 2.
It's just mechanically logging your keystrokes. That's all it's doing.
It's basically a surveillance system for your indecision.
Yeah, and it provides zero semantic value. None. And the text explicitly targets this phenomenon, noting that even when you are just doing isolated design exercise.
It's just messing around.
Right. Not even client work. Just practice. Even then, you need to train your brain to avoid these default cascades.
Yeah.
It's about building a neurological habit.
That makes sense.
Because if you tolerate rectangle 1 copy in your practice files, you will inevitably leak that exact chaos into a production environment.
Okay, now I have to play devil's advocate here for the creatives out there.
Go for it.
Because there is this really palpable tension between the flow state and the archivist state. When you are rapidly prototyping, trying to force a raw concept out of your brain and onto the canvas, stopping to rename a background box feels violently counterproductive.
It feels like slamming on the brakes.
Exactly. It disrupts the cognitive momentum. It's like a chef stopping to thoroughly wash, dry, and polish every single measuring spoon while in the middle of executing a really complex, time-sensitive reduction.
By the time the spoon is put away, the sauce is completely burned.
Yes, the inspiration is gone.
Well, what's fascinating here is that the author actually anticipates that exact friction.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The text provides a very specific concession to the reality of the creative process. It explicitly states, and I quote, "When you design quickly, you can let yourself go."
Oh, thank God. The relief of hearing that from a technical manual is immense.
I know, right? The objective is not to artificially throttle your ideation phase, because that phase requires plasticity. You need to move fast, break things, and yes, let rectangle 1 copy 4 exist temporarily.
Temporarily being the operative word.
Exactly. Because that concession is immediately followed by strict operational boundary. The rule is you tidy up before moving on to the next screen.
Okay, so it's about boundaries.
Right. You compartmentalize your workflow into 2 distinct modes. Mode A is the generative flow state. Mode B is the consolidation phase.
So you don't just leave the mess for the end of the project.
Definitely not. And you certainly don't leave it for the developer. You do the dishes before you open the restaurant for the next day. It's about maintaining the hygiene of the file incrementally.
Tidy as you go. That makes perfect sense. It grants permission for that temporary chaos, but demands rigorous cleanup before you close that specific mental tab.
Exactly.
And speaking of professional rigor, there is a mandate in this chapter that serves as a massive reality check.
The language requirement.
Yes. The text states definitively, no matter where in the world you are, name your components and groups in English.
Now, if we connect this to the bigger picture of the global tech ecosystem, the necessity of this rule becomes glaringly obvious.
Right, because we don't work in silos anymore.
Exactly. We operate in asynchronous, highly distributed environments. A designer might be pushing a commit in Tokyo, right?
Yeah.
And then a front-end developer in Berlin might be pulling that exact same file 3 hours later to begin implementation.
So if the Tokyo designer names their primary navigational components in Japanese or relies on some super local idioms,
the Berlin developer faces an immediate, completely unnecessary layer of translation friction.
the file ceases to be a functional blueprint and basically becomes a localized puzzle.
It's a roadblock. When you are a junior designer, it is remarkably easy to treat your Figma or Sketch file as just a private journal.
Because you're the only one looking at it most of the time.
Right. You know what the layer does, so you just assume it's fine. But in a professional pipeline, your file is a shared public workspace.
It's public property.
You are designing for the developer who will inspect the DOM tomorrow, or maybe the senior designer auditing the project next month. Using English just establishes a universal API for human collaboration.
An API for humans. I love that phrasing. And, the text goes far beyond just demanding English. It introduces a specific syntax, the gradation system, which honestly was a massive aha moment for me.
It's incredibly powerful.
It really is. The source recommends using either a / or a hyphen to set the name and the general family for an object.
Right, creating a hierarchy.
Yeah. The specific example they show is CTA /button/ small / green gradient. And what blew my mind about this / syntax is that modern design tools actually read that as a directory command.
They parse it automatically.
You aren't just writing a highly descriptive string of text. You are literally programming your asset library's folder structure in real time as you type.
And this right here, this is the critical threshold where a designer transitions into systems thinking.
Yeah, moving from just drawing to actually building.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The software's compiler is built to recognize that specific / character as a nested hierarchy trigger.
It's so smart.
So when you convert that grouped UI element into a symbol or a component, the software parses that string. It reads CTA /button/ small.
Right.
And it dynamically generates a master root folder named CTA Then it builds a subdirectory inside that called button.
And within that, it isolates the small variant.
Precisely.
So you are basically building a directed acyclic graph of your entire UI inventory just by typing on the keyboard.
It's effortless organization.
It transforms what used to be a flat, completely unmanageable list of hundreds of random components into a deeply organized, instantly searchable database.
And the mechanical benefit of that is exponential. If a team member needs to deploy a specific interaction state, they don't have to visually hunt across a massive canvas.
Zooming in and out, trying to find that one specific hover state.
Right, they just navigate the logic tree that you built.
Yeah.
The text really emphasizes that this structural clarity is what defines a mature file.
You know, if you're bringing this methodology into your next job interview or like a portfolio review,
Oh, that's a game changer.
handing over a file with this level of architectural clarity instantly signals technical maturity. It proves you understand that your design is merely the first step in a complex deployment pipeline.
You elevate yourself from someone who just draws interfaces to someone who engineers digital products.
Naming layers and groups must become your second nature. It really is that fundamental.
Absolutely. And engineering a product means looking at the macro architecture just as rigorously as those micro components.
Right, because we can't just stop at the buttons.
Exactly. Moving from the granular button to the entire viewport real estate introduces a completely different organizational challenge. Once the individual elements are indexed and nested, you have to block out the main geographical regions of your user interface.
Which brings us to top-level sections. The text outlines the most predictable macro groups, right? Like header, navigation, content, and footer.
The standard buckets.
Yeah. And while every specific product will obviously require its own unique structural buckets based on its unique topology, there is a profound logic to establishing these non-negotiable regions at the very top of your layer hierarchy.
It creates predictable wayfinding.
Wayfinding, yes.
Think about the cognitive load on an engineer who is tasked with debugging, say, a Z-index issue in a sticky footer.
Oh, I've been there. It's awful.
And it's on page 32 of a prototype. If the layer tree is flat, they have to physically sift through hundreds of nodes just to find the footer container.
Just scrolling and scrolling.
But if the file utilizes top-level sectioning, they just collapse the tree, locate the master footer directory, and instantly isolate the problematic nodes.
Okay, and here's where it gets really interesting regarding that wayfinding. The book introduces a visual hack that relies entirely on exploiting how the human brain processes information.
Emojis.
Yes. It advises using emojis for specific top-level group types to dramatically accelerate navigation through these complex layer lists.
Which sounds a bit silly at first, right?
It does, like putting smiley faces in a professional dev file. But the concept relies on the efficiency of saccadic eye movements.
Right, the actual biology of vision.
Yeah, the fovea, the part of the eye responsible for shark central vision, it can identify a distinct color block or shape fractions of a second faster than it can parse a gray string of alphanumeric characters.
And the text explicitly points out that using an emoji is simply faster than reading text alone. You don't have to decode the word footer, you just see the symbol.
The visual examples in the source are fantastic for this. Like, it suggests using a literal graph emoji for a dashboard section, or my favorite, an actual human foot emoji for the footer.
The foot is great, it's so literal.
It makes me think of the design logic behind highway signage. When you are driving down the interstate at 70 miles an hour, you don't actually read the typography of the word hospital.
You're moving too fast for that.
Exactly. You don't have the processing time. You scan the horizon for the giant reflective blue square with the white H.
Yep.
Emojis in a dense layer panel function identically to that. They allow a designer to navigate their environment at highway speeds by relying entirely on instant symbol recognition.
That analogy perfectly captures the mechanism at play, because the visual cortex just bypasses phonetic decoding entirely.
It's an incredible shortcut.
It is. However, the text provides a vital, non-negotiable caveat here to ensure this whole system doesn't just collapse into total chaos.
Ah, right. There are rules.
Strict rules. The emojis can be hyper-literal, like the foot, or entirely abstract. I think the text actually uses a unicorn as an example.
But unicorn, yeah, I remember that.
But the chosen symbol must remain strictly consistent across the entire project ecosystem.
Because you are essentially creating a bespoke visual lexicon for your team. You can't designate the footer with a foot emoji on the landing page and then suddenly switch it to a shoe emoji on the checkout flow.
No, because that inconsistency immediately shatters the exact cognitive shortcut you were trying to build.
You're back to guessing.
Exactly. Furthermore, the text is ruthless about application density.
What do you mean by density?
Well, each high-level macro group receives an icon. But, quoting the text directly, the individual layers or smaller groups don't need an emoji that would be overkill.
Oh man, yeah, if every single vector path, text node, and auto layout frame has a rocket ship or a little fire emoji attached to it, you've completely obliterated the visual hierarchy.
It just becomes noise.
Exactly. You no longer have highway signs, you just have visual static. The power of the symbol is entirely dependent on its isolation.
And the ultimate utility of this emoji system really manifests during large-scale refactoring.
When you have to change 100 screens at once.
Right. The text points out that with this visual system in place, adjusting a massive number of screens becomes incredibly fast. It dramatically reduces your cognitive load.
You preserve your highly limited brain power for actual creative problem solving rather than burning it on menial navigation tasks.
Which is the whole point of organizing your tools.
So we've established the rules for the visible geography, right? The nested layers, the slash folders, and the emoji flagged macro sections.
Container structure.
Yeah. But what about the invisible rules that govern the content flooding into those sections? We have to bridge the gap between static design and dynamic code, starting with the typographic engine.
Typography is where things start getting really rigid. But moving into text styles requires a shift in how we actually view the canvas.
How so?
Well, the text offers a workflow insight regarding typography that often feels deeply counterintuitive to junior designers.
Okay, I'm listening.
It advises creating your formal text styles after designing the first few major screens of your project.
See, this raises a massive question regarding design system architecture for me.
I thought it might.
Because if a design system is intended to be a strict set of governing rules to enforce consistency, why wouldn't you define all your typographic rules on day one?
It seems like the logical first step.
Right. If I'm building a house, I finalize the blueprints before I pour the concrete. Why not set up the H1s, the body copy, and the captions before drawing a single frame?
Because digital product design, especially in its nascent stages, requires far more fluidity than architecture.
Okay.
The text refers to these initial screens as the testing ground. You cannot accurately predict how specific font families, weights, kerning values, and line heights will actually interact with real-world data payloads until you start manipulating them on the canvas.
Ah, real-world data. So you have to stress test the typography with actual messy content.
Exactly. A headline style might look beautiful with the three-word English placeholder, right?
Oh, I know where this is going.
But it completely breaks down when populated with the realistic three-line German localization string.
German localization will destroy any pristine UI. It's just a fact of life.
It really will. So precisely the point is that the topological rules of the interface must be discovered through experimentation.
The testing ground.
Yes. However, the text strictly states that once you validate the typography on those baseline screens, the testing ground phase terminates.
The fun is over.
The fun is over. You extract the successful typographical variables, you encode them into formal text styles within the software, and from that moment forward, you only ever select styles from that approved list.
No more tweaking the kerning by 1 pixel on a random screen.
No, you define the rules and stick to them.
The ripple effect of that discipline is massive, though. If the client pivots and demands a slightly larger base font size for accessibility reasons.
Which happens constantly.
Constantly. You don't have to manually select 50 disparate text boxes across 20 screens. You update the master parameter and the entire file propagates the change instantaneously.
It's beautiful to watch.
But regarding how we actually name these extracted styles, the text advocates for a convention that, in my experience, frequently causes friction between design and engineering.
Oh, the semantic naming. Yeah.
Yes. It explicitly states that the best naming convention derives directly from HTML and CSS semantics, like H1, H2, H3P for paragraph, and so on.
The developer's language.
Right. But why should a visual designer subordinate their naming conventions to the DOM structure? From a purely visual standpoint, wouldn't naming it massive hero headline and subtle metadata text be far more descriptive for the design team?
It might feel more descriptive in the isolated vacuum of the design file, but we have to remember design files are merely an intermediary state.
They aren't the final product.
Exactly. They are visual instructions for code execution. When a designer uses subjective, arbitrary names like massive hero headline, they basically force the developer to act as a semantic translator.
Oh, I see.
The engineer has to look at the visual output, look at the arbitrary name, and then try to deduce, okay, is massive hero headline intended to map to the HTML H1 tag for SEO and accessibility purposes? Or is it actually an H2 with the custom display class attached to it?
You are basically injecting a layer of guesswork right into the handoff process.
By utilizing H1, H2, or P, the designer directly aligns the visual hierarchy with the semantic hierarchy of the web.
It takes the guesswork out.
Completely. The text explicitly notes this, makes it infinitely easier for developers to comprehend the architectural intent. It is an act of profound professional empathy.
Professional empathy, I love that.
You are proactively removing friction by speaking their native language. When they inspect the file, the design tool tells them exactly which semantic tag to write.
It's about acknowledging the operational reality of the person who actually inherits your output.
Precisely.
And that empathy extends directly into the visual physics of the design. Which brings us to layer styles. Because if text styles govern the semantics of the words, layer styles dictate the visual parameters of the physical containers.
Layer styles are really the final critical mechanism in establishing a robust design architecture.
What exactly do they hold, according to the chapter?
The text details exactly what variables these styles encapsulate. It's the fill properties, whether that's solid hex codes or really complex linear gradients, the stroke data, shadow coordinates, opacity percentages, and blur values.
So everything that makes a shape look the way it does.
Right. By defining these parameters centrally, you ensure global visual consistency.
You decouple the aesthetic properties from the actual vector paths drawn on the canvas.
Yes, exactly.
So if you have a primary interactive state with a specific soft drop shadow and like a subtle green gradient, you don't attempt to manually recreate those exact hex codes and shadow spread values every single time you drop a new button into a frame.
That would be a nightmare.
You just apply the saved layer style, perhaps leveraging our earlier folder syntax, naming it gradient/green-shadow.
And the text actually features a visual of this exact hierarchical tree, which is super helpful to see.
It really is. But there is a glaring technical limitation highlighted in the text here that designers frequently stumble over.
The border radius issue.
Yes. The text says, sadly, most layer styles don't save the border radius values.
That specific omission in modern design tooling introduces a massive vector for error.
It really does.
Because layer styles notoriously fail to capture border radius values, designers are basically stripped of their automated safety net regarding corner roundings.
And the psychological danger there is that once a designer commits to using layer styles, they outsource their vigilance to the software.
They assume the computer is handling it.
Right. You apply the primary button style, and your brain just assumes the object is now perfectly compliant with the overarching design system.
But it isn't necessarily.
No, because the border radius variable wasn't packaged into that style application. So you could easily render a dashboard where one card has a really sharp 2-pixel rounding and the adjacent card has a pill-like 12-pixel rounding.
Despite both objects referencing the exact same master layer style for their color and their depth.
Exactly.
It introduces the risk of profound visual inconsistency, requiring strict manual discipline.
You have to double-check everything.
The designer must act as the compiler for that specific variable, manually auditing the corner rounding of every single instance. It is a critical reminder that the software will not fully automate your professionalism.
The software will not fully automate your professionalism. That is a quote to live by right there.
It's true, though.
And the text also issues a stark warning regarding the proliferation of these styles, right? The threat of style bloat.
Yes, more is not better.
The author emphasizes that a massive volume of styles directly correlates to a chaotic layout. The mandate is to limit the total number of layer styles and aggressively reuse existing styles whenever a new object is introduced.
Redundancy is the absolute enemy of a scalable system.
It makes me think of an inexperienced painter trying to render a forest.
Oh, I like this analogy.
They mix a highly specific, complex shade of green for the very first tree, but when they move to the second tree, instead of utilizing their existing palette, they mix an entirely new, marginally different shade of green.
Just slightly off.
Right, and if they repeat this for every single branch and leaf, the palette eventually devolves into hundreds of muddy, completely disconnected pigments.
The painting loses all visual cohesion.
Exactly. The fundamental rule of layer styles is Use the green you already mixed.
If you have an established style named subtle card background and you introduce a totally new modular component to the page,
Do not create slightly lighter, subtle card backgrounds simply because you want to alter the luminance by 3%.
you force the new component to adapt to the existing style token.
You have to have that restraint.
That restraint is what separates a UI kit from a true design system. It keeps the file computationally lightweight and visually unified.
So once the text styles are semantically mapped and the layer styles are consolidated, we reach the final stage. The handoff.
The moment of truth.
The source provides highly actionable advice for generating the initial style guide. It advises isolating these variables onto a dedicated artboard, showcasing the typography hierarchy and color swatches alongside the generated CSS code.
Right, creating a single source of truth.
And it notes these can be pushed to developer handoff platforms. It specifically mentions tools like Zeppelin or Avocode. But here is where the text introduces a seemingly contradictory philosophy.
The CSS code quality.
Yes, we just spent this entire deep dive championing professional empathy and aligning with developer workflows.
Making their lives easier.
Right. Yet regarding the CSS generated by these design tools, the text explicitly states, don't worry about the CSS code clarity, the design tools export way too many properties.
It's a sharp observation.
But are we not just knowingly handing developers bloated garbage code?
The contradiction is definitely palpable. When a design tool auto-generates CSS, it is notoriously verbose and frequently useless for actual structural layout.
It's terrible for layout.
It will export rigid absolute positioning coordinates, outdated WebKit prefixes, fixed pixel widths that completely violate responsive web development principles.
Basically everything a modern front-end dev hates.
Exactly.
So why explicitly include it in the handoff?
Because nested deep within that verbose, messy code are the exact, mathematically precise raw variables the developer desperately requires to execute the visual layer.
Ah, okay. So we ignore the layout data, but we harvest the visual data.
Exactly. The text illustrates this with a specific example of a generated green gradient.
Right, I remember that block of code.
The exported CSS contains the string. Linear gradient 0 degrees, hex code 13B0B000%, hex code F4FF51, 100%.
It's incredibly specific.
And it also outputs the exact box shadow string. 05P by 7PS, 0GBA 63, 192, 158.40.
Okay, when you read it out like that, I get it.
If you strip that code snippet from the handoff, the front-end engineer is forced to manually use an eyedropper tool to sample the hex codes 13B0B0 and F4FF51.
Which is so prone to error.
They have to visually guess the blur radius and the precise opacity percentage of the drop shadow. By providing the bloated CSS, you are delivering the exact mathematical truth of the design's physics.
The text basically assumes a high level of competence from the developer. It trusts that they will use regular expressions or just their own visual scanning to extract the irgibus strings and discard the absolute positioning garbage.
It is still an act of empathy, just a highly pragmatic one.
You aren't giving them a pre-built house, you are delivering the exact mathematically verified raw lumber they need to frame it themselves.
And the alternative is forcing them to reverse engineer your visual intent, which basically guarantees discrepancies between the design file and the production build.
Nobody wants that. Wow. This has been a phenomenal breakdown of the invisible mechanics of our tools. We've navigated the psychological shift required to abandon the default naming cascade.
Letting go of rectangle 1 copy.
Yes. We've explored the programmatic power of the / in compiling nested directories. We've mapped the cognitive shortcuts of emoji-based wayfinding, and we've dissected the semantic necessity of mapping our typography to the DOM.
It covers so much ground.
It really does. Naming layers and groups really must become your second nature because it is the bedrock of everything else.
It is the unglamorous infrastructure that allows high-level creative execution to actually survive the collision with a production environment.
Well said.
And as we conclude, I want to leave you with a final shift in perspective.
Oh, please do.
Throughout this entire analysis, we've framed these protocols around communicating with external entities, right?
Yeah, the foreign developer, the senior designer, the client.
But consider the reality of product life cycles. 6 months from now, when you are forced to open an archive project at 10 p.m. on a Sunday to execute a panic-inducing critical hotfix.
Oh man, my stomach just dropped.
Right. The other person you are desperately trying to communicate with in that moment is future you.
That is a terrifying and universally relatable scenario.
Future you will not possess the working memory to recall why a critical layout group was named Frame 114.
No way, you'll have completely forgotten.
Future you will not remember the specific alpha channel percentage on that modal shadow. The provocative question every designer must ask themselves when structuring a file is, are you being a good teammate to your future self?
Wow.
Because the organizational discipline you abandon today becomes the exact technical friction you will suffer tomorrow.
Treat your future self with the respect of a professional. Build the systems now. I mean, if you want to audit your own workflow and actually see the layer topologies and CSS syntax we deconstructed today, you absolutely must check out the book we referenced, Design User Interface.
The visual examples in Chapter 25 alone will fundamentally alter how you structure your layer panels.
Highly recommend it. You can buy the book immediately by scanning the QR code of the book link provided in the description below, or by visiting the link directly at https://hypeforacademy.gumroad.com/Lua book.
Grab a copy.
Start implementing these macro sections, those emojis, and those slash directories today. And please hit that follow button for more deep dives into technical design breakdowns and career-building content.
We have a lot more coming.
We are going to keep tearing down the methodologies that separate the amateurs from the true engineers. Thank you for joining the deep dive today. Keep organizing, keep building those systems, and we'll catch you on the next one.